Entrepreneurs on born that brew. You are now listening to the Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney. Let's grow!
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Adam McChesney, and I want to thank you for being here today. If you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We would love for you to share this content on social media by tagging me and our guests, and this way we can get this content out to more people. Today, I'm joined by someone that I met at TCS over the summer in Costa Rica. I got the opportunity to not only listen to her speak, but have her as a guest on the show. So I'm really excited to have her on the podcast today. She's an expert in a variety of topics that are super important in entrepreneurship that go beyond the business, including marriage, of course, which we'll be talking about today. Today's guest is Kimberly Holmes. She is the CEO of Marriage Helper. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and just to kind of start, what did you think about that event in Costa Rica?
My gosh, it was amazing. I mean, other than the fact, on top of the fact, I should say that we were in an all-inclusive resort, so you could eat as much as you want. And I'm a total foodie, which was incredible. But I was actually just speaking to JC and Karen about it yesterday, JC and Karen Height. It's one of the best events I've ever been to. The people that are there are just super high. I mean, next level types of people that you want to know. You know, they say surround yourself, like the 5 people you surround yourself with kind of determine the person you're going to become. And I think that room is the kind of people you want to surround yourself with for sure.
Yeah, no, the feedback you just had there, I think, is pretty consistent with a lot of people that have been to the event. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased being a part of the Height family, but I've gone to a lot of events over the last couple of years. And I think just kind of, ties into obviously what you talk about with marriage and entrepreneurship. Business isn't just always about business. And so when you can have that other connection and really get to know people and surround yourself with people that have similar values, I think they do a really good job of keeping that event in anything that they do super small as it can possibly be for a reason, while still getting a lot of value out of there. So that way everybody gets the benefit from it. And it's not, hey, what can you do for me? It's how can we help each other grow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You could feel it. You could feel it in the room for sure.
You definitely could. You definitely could. Well, Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind, just we like to start out by just getting to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got started in entrepreneurship and everything up to where you're at today.
Yes, absolutely. I am a wife. I am a mom. I am a Ph.D. candidate, which all of those together make me insane is honestly the bottom line of it. Some people will say, how do you juggle all of this stuff? And I say, it doesn't make me wise. Don't follow in my footsteps. And then I also have the honest honor and opportunity of helping lead an organization called Marriage Helper, where we are helping to save marriages. And the work that we've been doing for the past 24 years there has been incredible. So my role there, I really am the vision caster, the one trying to keep the team moving forward. We have an incredible team of people. And the way that we do what we do, Marriage Helper has been around for 24 years. I've been there for 11 and started when I was in the middle of getting my master's in marriage and family therapy, actually. And we help couples pretty much the way I say it is this: the couples everyone else has given up on because they're the cases that are too hard to deal with. That's where we start with people. And so for 24 years, we've been working with active affairs, separations, people going through a divorce. And by the grace of God, we have over a 70% success rate at helping couples in those situations to save their marriage. And so many of the listeners today may be thinking, wow, that's not where I am. Great. Then let's not get there. So we also love to work further, up the funnel, so to say, than that, and helping to prevent that from ever happening to marriages and to couples and to families.
I love that. And I love how you kind of hit on that. It's like, we're not there. And I think a lot of people, whether it's anything in business or it's personal or marriage, for example, like we're talking about here, they think that's that's too far distant from me. That
Right.
could never possibly get there. As you mentioned, it's like, well, let's not get there. Let's take care of the things that we can do right now. And I think a lot of times, no different than hiring a business coach or hiring a mindset coach or hiring somebody to help you out with your marriage. It doesn't have to get so bad to where you're going to throw away your marriage and get a divorce, or throw away your business and go bankrupt. To ask for help and get around the right people like yourself in order to blossom the relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And just like a great business coach or mindset mentor or anything like that, physical training coach, right? Isn't it so much better to also know that your business coach has helped someone when they have gone through bankruptcy or having to lay a bunch of people off? They've helped someone through the worst of times to be able to come back from that and to be better than ever before. And so that's one of the things that differentiates what we do at Marriage Helper is we are no stranger to getting our hands dirty and messy and just the real rawness of things that people honestly never thought they would get into. I mean, I'm telling you, all of our clients, every one of them that contacts us will say, I never thought this would happen to me. And when you don't think something's going to happen to you and you say, well, I would never, or my husband or wife would never do that, then you're not putting the right protection in place to make sure that it actually doesn't happen. It actually can become more of a vulnerability to you. Just like a business owner who says, finances are great. I don't need to look at them. I don't need to have my finger on the pulse of that. That's when that's going to be a problem for that person, because it's going to get out of hand and blow up because they're not taking the proper steps necessary to protect that part of it. And how much more important is our marriage and our family, even when it comes to, in general in life, but even when it comes to wanting to run a healthy business, the biggest support system that you're going to have comes from inside your home. And whether your spouse is supportive of you and helping and feeling a part of helping to fulfill that dream of yours or not. So I don't know where you want to take the show today. We could talk about a myriad of things, but
I appreciate you sharing that. I think obviously a lot of the listeners are entrepreneurs. So I would love to kind of dive into some of the stuff that you see. Again, everybody's story is probably a little bit different, but they're all kind of have some similar things as well. So what are 3 things that you kind of see when you're working with an entrepreneur, let's say, that's like, hey, I'm trying to do everything. I hear all the time, and I've been guilty of it as well. I'm literally building the business for my wife, for my family, for all of these things, but then the actions and how they actually feel are completely different. So what are some of the things that you see, maybe 3 things consistently that entrepreneurs typically struggle with while trying to manage a business, while trying to get that in a position, while also taking care of what's most important, the marriage and the family?
Absolutely. These are not going to be in any particular order, but maybe the first one is going to be the most important. And that's this tension inside of yourself of wanting to do what you love without sacrificing who you love. And let me tell you a story. So back when my dad was in the corporate world, so I was a kid during this time, but he went to a real estate convention, and he told me this story. When he was at this real estate convention, the top realtor that year stood up on stage and he said, here's the thing. I tell my kids, if they want to have the nice cars, if they want to eat the nice meals, then they're going to have to live with the fact that I'm not around. And he actually went as far as to say, I got them in my car. I took them over to the ghetto area of where we live, to the projects basically. And I said, do you want to live like these people? Because you can choose. You can either have me home, or we can live like this. Which would you choose? And he was saying this from stage as a good thing. And he said, they looked at me and said, Daddy, we want you to work because we want to have a better life. So you work, and we'll stop complaining about the fact that you're not home. And everyone in the audience was like, yeah, that's it. Like, they don't understand that we just need to work and we're providing for them. And my dad was sitting in the audience and thinking, it doesn't have to be this way. And I remember back a long time ago, my husband was in insurance, and did not love it. But we went to one of those conventions, and there was a similar talk that was given up on stage. And I was unfortunately on the front row during this talk. And this couple got up, and the wife said, when my husband was building this business, if he would get home before 11 p.m., I would yell at him and tell him he needs to go back out, because I wanted a Range Rover as my push present, because I wanted all of these things. And then they showed these pictures of like, look at this stuff we have. Look at this amazing house in Las Vegas, and this pool that we put in, and this $10 million this and that or the other. And people were cheering. And I was sitting in that front row and thinking, this must have been how my dad felt years ago, because it doesn't have to be this way. And all I could think of was those kids. Like, how in the world are those marriages going to survive? How in the world are those kids going to feel loved and secure and attached in that family? And what are their future marriages going to look like? And so the tension that entrepreneurs have is we do want to do this for our families, and we want to leave a better legacy, and we want to leave a major impact on the world. And it's that drive within us. But the tension that we're going to carry is, how do we do what we love without sacrificing who we love? Because at the end of the day, I saw this meme just yesterday. The only person who's going to remember if you worked late was your kids. And it's not going to be a good thing. Yep. The only person who's going to feel the absence when you're not there at the dinner table are your kids, your wife, your husband. Like, how can we make sure that the family unit is strong? And here's the thing. What we typically don't realize, which leads to the second problem that I believe entrepreneurs face, is that many times they have a spouse who is frustrated, or kids that are frustrated with how much they work. And so because of that desire, and number one of I want to provide for who I love, but in the middle of trying to do that, I'm actually sacrificing my relationship with them. That second one leads to those people being really frustrated and not supportive or on board. And so now not only does the entrepreneur feel the pressure at work to deliver and feels like the weight of the world is on their shoulders there, but then when they come home, they feel like they're not even supported at home. And if we can actually turn the way that we are looking at this and realize that if we're doing this first and foremost because we love our family, like, yes, we love our work. Yes, we love our clients. Yes, we love the mission that we do. And all of those are great things. But first and foremost, if our jobs are to really make sure that the home environment is our number one priority, then how do we bring our family into what we do, especially our spouse, and making sure that our spouse is a part of it? And that doesn't mean that they have to work in the business, but if your spouse feels like what you're doing isn't actually for them anymore, it isn't actually leading to have a healthier family anymore, then it's going to cause even more problems at home, which in turn is going to cause more problems at work. Because when people are experiencing frustration at home, then they bring that to work, and it's harder to make decisions. It's harder to have hard conversations with people at work, or you may be even more sensitive. And so you start leading from a place of fear and anxiety and frustration, as opposed to more of that growth mindset. So those are at least the top two. And then what goes right along with that is the third one, which I would say is when the family doesn't feel like you have time for them, which leads to even further frustration within the entrepreneur of, don't you see everything that I'm trying to do here? Don't you see that I'm trying to provide well for us? And so what's the bottom line of all of this? These are three problems, but maybe we should talk about some ways that we can find some solutions for them. And there are solutions. And that's the thing. Those solutions are actually probably more simple than people might think that they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean the solution of how to fix some of these things are easy.
Yeah. And I think that's what the solution aspect, I think like entrepreneurs are wired to be like, okay, I understand there's a problem, but we're all solution solvers. So what are some of those solutions, and how do you workshop those things?
Yeah, absolutely. At the core of every relationship, what makes a relationship work or not work is this concept of push and pull. A push, in the way that we define it at Marriage Helper, is anything that I do that evokes a negative emotion within someone else. So when I do these things, not based on what my intention is, but based on what their perception is, when I do these things, does it lead this person to have a negative emotion towards me or a positive emotion towards me? And then the pull is, what are the things that evoke positive emotions, that when I do these things, it evokes positive emotions within someone else? So let's look at an entrepreneur as an example. So in my home, I am the entrepreneur, which is not the norm, right? Typically it's the man that's more of the breadwinner and the entrepreneur mindset. But of course, women can be as well, and many times are, and many times it can even be harder in those situations because it also goes against some of the societal norms and things like that. But so let's just take my example. And here's an example. Here's actually an example of something that happened in Costa Rica. So as an entrepreneur, we all typically have morning routines, right? Like there's a set of things that we want to do in the morning to get our minds right, to get our bodies right, so that we can go into work and to the people that are depending on us with a clear head. And so in Costa Rica, I was speaking, but I also had my family. And so in the mornings, I would get up before my husband got up, before the kids got up, and I would go to, on the beach to run or go down to the gym and whatever. Well, after about the third morning of this, my husband said, "Are you ever going to spend time with us?" I'm like, this is great, because I'm here literally speaking on this topic. And here I am being faced with like, what am I going to do? In that moment, I wasn't intending for that to have a negative emotion towards him, because the way he was feeling was, am I just a babysitter? Like, we didn't talk about this. I wasn't expecting you to always be gone every morning when we woke up. We're out of our normal home environment, right? Where it's much easier. Like everyone just kind of wakes up. The kids have a lot more to do. But when you're on vacation and you're kind of stuck in a hotel room and you can't just leave the kids to go and do something real quick, it makes it a little different. And our kids are young. So he felt like that was a push. You're not, I don't feel respected. I don't feel like you're here. I feel like you're just kind of doing whatever you want to do. Like you're being selfish, and we are just having to kind of figure out ourselves in the moment. And I realized this isn't the way I want him to feel. So what could I do? But I could have gotten defensive. And of course, like in the moment reading it, I did in my mind, I was like, but I have valid reasons for doing this. And, so on and so forth. It doesn't matter. My perception or intention of what was happening isn't what mattered in that moment. It was instead, what is it that would evoke a positive emotion within my husband? So instead of getting all up in a tizzy and ending up fighting about it, which we've definitely had our fair share of doing in the past, I got that as a text. I went back up to the room and I said, hey, like, let's talk about this. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. Help me understand, like, what is it that would make you feel loved and respected? And then just listening to him. And that doesn't mean, so a lot of times people will hear this in a variety of situations and say, well, does that mean that I just give up all of my own needs or desires or things that I want to get done? No. But if we can at least start the conversation with, help me understand what your needs are. Help me understand how I hurt you. And then let's work together and compromise so that both of us can make sure we have our needs met. And, in my situation, we'll set the alarm an hour earlier, get back before the kids wake up, and then we can, everyone can be happy. In compromise, everyone has to sacrifice to some extent. But it all really goes back here to this concept of push and pull. And when we begin to assess our own actions with our spouse, with our kids, what are the things that I'm doing that's evoking negative emotions, that's actually pushing them further away from me? We need to stop doing those things. And instead, we need to start doing the things that will pull our spouse, our kids closer to us. So in the examples that I gave earlier about the real estate agent, the top one, when he put the kids in the car and drove them and kind of gave them an ultimatum of, what do you want? That was absolutely a push. He gave them an option of either having a shelter and things like that, like having basic needs met, or having his love. No kid should ever be given that kind of ultimatum. And so it absolutely put a wall between the relationship that they had with their dad from that moment forward, and taught them, well, if I want to to show people I love them, I guess I just need to buy them a bunch of stuff. So just assessing what are the things that we're doing that may be pushing them away, maybe pulling them away, and a lot of time, or pulling them closer. And you want to stop the things that are pushing them away and start doing more of the things that can pull them closer.
I really appreciate you sharing that story about the TCS situation, because I think I've certainly have dealt with that a time or two when I'm trying to wake up early, get my morning routine done, whether it's on vacation or whether it's on a weekend and all these other things. And in first light of sign, I think most of us entrepreneurs don't realize the impact of how it has on the relationships and the family and the marriage, because we're not trying to do something wrong, right? We're like, okay, we're getting done what we know we need to do in order to get the mind right, to get exercise in, to do whatever our morning routine is. And it's really, really easy to get defensive when there is that pushback, because you're like, I'm doing this for myself so I can show up the best in my business, so I can do X, Y, and Z. And I've had to really work on that myself and take a step back and realize, like, that's not what the focus of this situation is. It's the interpretation of how I'm interpreting it versus how my wife is or anybody else. And so I think where most entrepreneurs go wrong is they still get in that mindset of like, I'm doing this for them. But if they don't see why you're doing it or understanding it on the surface level, it's going to kind of go by the wayside. And then there's going to be this constant butting of the heads of like, I'm doing this for you, but I want, I just think that's super interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And Adam, the other part of this too, that's very important, especially for entrepreneurs and especially for people who are thinking of entering into entrepreneurship, is having a conversation with your spouse of what is it that you want for your marriage. So looking into the future, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and really saying, at the end of our life, what is it we want to have done together, experienced together? How do we want our grandkids and kids to be interacting? Like most people, of course, are still going to say we want to have great relationships with them and, great holiday parties where all of the kids are around one big table or whatever that might be. But when you kind of go into this, looking forward into where do we want our marriage and our family to be? We do this in our business all the time, but when is the first time or the last time that people really intentionally do this inside of their marriage? And the reason this is so important, especially for entrepreneurs, is because inside of our business, we can forecast and vision cast all day long. But if our family doesn't see how they play a role in it, they're less likely to be supportive. And again, that doesn't mean they're going to work in the business. Maybe they do. But if they can see how the business is a vehicle of helping you as a family achieve goals and desires that you have as a family unit, then the business doesn't become something that is getting in the way of time together or anything like that. We can actually use it or view it as it's the instrument that's helping us to move forward. So for example, when we look for, so again, I'll use the example of me and my husband. We love traveling, and that's something that I did with my family when I was a kid. It's something our kids love doing with us. And as we look forward into the future, that's where we make a lot of great family memories. How can we do more travel and experience more things with the kids and with each other? And, in the future, maybe even have a vacation home somewhere, right? And so if we have that as one of the things that we want to do together, another thing could be that you say, our kids are adopted, and we were incredibly blessed to have our adoption completely funded by working with an organization called Both Hands International that you serve a widow, and in serving a widow, you raise money to bring home your children. So you're serving the widow and the orphan. And because of that, our adoption was completely funded. And so another thing that's really big for us is how do we support that organization to help more kids get into their forever homes, right? So looking at both of those things, when we look at just my business, Marriage Helper, and we say, okay, there's a lot going on at Marriage Helper. I do work a lot. I do have some decent work-life balance, but we'll talk about that later. But how can we see Marriage Helper, instead of being what takes up my time, as what actually gives us the blessing and benefit of being able to do these visions and these, these desires that we have as a family, to help us give more, to bring home more orphans, and to help us travel more as a family. So that's one way. So as an example, in Costa Rica, like saying yes to Costa Rica was an easy yes, especially when I realized I could bring my kids, because that's a vision. That's a dream for us. Like that's a goal as a family that we have to do. And so it could have as easily been, hey, I have to go to Costa Rica. I'm going to be gone for a week. And I left the kids. And then it would have just been another frustration point. But when we see the business as, here's an opportunity for us to actually do what we're wanting to do as a family and fund what we want to fund as a family, or give the vehicle in any other way to do what we want to do as a family, then we can actually all work together to support that business. And it doesn't mean that the kids are still going to want you working 12-hour days, but at least if you miss a dinner that was supposed to be a family dinner once a month or something like that, there's at least a vision of what the future, what we're working towards together for the future. And so less animosity and resentment builds up when that's a part of it.
Yeah, I love, it's no different than business. It's also with your family, is bringing them into the vision of how it impacts and pushes them forward as well. And I know you briefly kind of touched on that work-life balance. I would love for you to kind of dive into that and how you've been able to kind of navigate that, and some tips you might have for other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. For us entrepreneurs, we love what we do, right? Like our brains just work on a different level and a different basis. We're working mentally probably all of the time. We're always having ideas, always thinking of things that need to be done. And so it's difficult to shut it off. And I don't know that it's even helpful to hear, I don't even know that it's helpful to hear from others, like you just have to shut off completely at 5 p.m. because then we're just going to beat ourselves up when at 8 p.m. we're like, but I have 18 great ideas and I just have to put them down. I don't know that that's it, but I do think that there's great opportunity in looking for the little areas in life to know when it's time to disconnect and really just spend time. Here's another example. And I'm sure all of us can relate to when we're just spinning the wheels and spinning the tires, and we find that we're just like really just mentally done and we're doing stupid stuff. Like we're checking Gmail a million times or going into Slack and seeing what's new there. And we kind of go, at least for me, I find myself just going in this cycle and realizing I'm not actually doing anything productive right now. So maybe this is a great opportunity, even if it's 3 p.m., to just shut down, and the kids are about to get home from school. Let me just be present for them when they get home. And, maybe later after they go to bed, if there's anything I feel like, is just weighing on me that's going to keep me from sleeping, I'll do a couple of things, but I'm not going to be more productive in what I'm doing right now. The other day I went to go pick up the kids from school, and it was 4:00, and I typically try and end my work day between 4 and 5. And I thought, there's a bunch of things that I could go home and try and knock out and get done right now. But we were supposed to have dinner with my parents that night. And I said, or the other thing I could do is just go to my parents' house and take a couple of hours to just spend time with my mom and spend time with my dad and have the kids be with their grandparents. And there was kind of this tension point within me, or a decision point, I guess I could say, in that moment of I could go home and get some things done that honestly I could get done tomorrow, or I could just make the decision of today I'm going to go spend time with my family. And I think it's becoming more aware in just moments like that. Instead of trying to find, at least for me in my season right now, I don't know that it's helpful to say I'm going to start work at this time and stop at this time and I'm going to completely disconnect. I think it's more of those opportunities as they come up throughout the day when the temptation is I need to be productive and go back to work, even though there might not be anything really pressing. And I could actually just invest a lot in the relationships in my family by just deciding to do it, by just deciding to go and to not work right now and to be present there. And that's the thing. As an entrepreneur, we have the blessing of being able to make decisions like that, but we also have the responsibility of the fact that we have a team that looks to us. And so I'm not saying any of this is easy. That's kind of how I'm thinking of it right now. I said I have a decent work-life balance. I wouldn't say it's necessarily perfect or that I'm the one to ironically learn from, because there's times I'm teaching classes at church, like a marriage class at church on a Tuesday evening. And like, how am I going to spend time with my kids in that? I just try and be more forward thinking and intentional, especially as my kids are getting older and I'm becoming more aware that, it's short. Like the time with them is short. The time with my husband could be short. Like we never know what tomorrow holds. And how do I steward these roles that God has given me in the best way that I can? So I guess that's more so of just how I'm processing through all of it right now.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. It definitely had me thinking, and I'm sure as most of this episode, the audience is going to get a lot out from it. So, Kimberly, as we wrap everything up today, I just want to thank you for coming on. This is a topic that we haven't heard really much about, at least the consistency of it coming from an expert. So I know that there's going to be a ton of value from just people going back and listening to this. I know I'm going to go back and listen to this and retake some more notes, but where can people stay connected with you and learn more about Marriage Helper online?
You can go to marriagehelper.com. We have great resources there. Our YouTube channel is flush with amazing videos and material, which you can go and follow us there. We also have a podcast about relationships called Relationship Radio, if people want to go and listen to that one. And I have one called It Starts with Attraction, where we talk about the 4 parts of ourselves: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, and how we can do more pulls in those areas of our life as opposed to pushes. I know that's a ton of stuff, but Adam, I appreciate you so much, just even being willing to share this type of content with your listeners. I love entrepreneurs. I love business owners, and I want to see them thrive. And I want to see them thrive by their marriages and families thriving as well. So I appreciate you having a heart for that.
Oh, of course. It's near and dear to me, especially as we're expecting our first child here soon. Probably by the time the episode comes out,
congrats. That's fantastic.
I'll be a dad. So I'm taking all the notes, and I learned a lot from this episode. That's why I love doing these podcasts. I learn just as much, if not more, from the guests than the audience. So I know there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to reach out to you just based on who I know listens to this podcast. So I look forward to hearing some amazing things coming out of this episode. And I want to thank you again to the audience for tuning in to today's podcast. We'll be sure to put all Kimberly's social links and everything that she talked about there. So please reach out to her. She and her company are phenomenal. And please be sure to subscribe, download, and share our content, as well as leaving 5-star reviews. They go a long way. We'll see you all next week. And remember, entrepreneurs aren't born, they are brewed.
I'm an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs aren't born, they're brewed. Thank you for listening to Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney.